Welcome to industrialscripts.co.uk, home of the Insider Interviews, a series of Q&As with people currently working at various levels and in different areas of the British film industry. The interviews are absolutely exclusive to Industrial Scripts and can't be accessed anywhere else.
Hello and welcome, and thanks for downloading this Industrial Scripts Insiders interview. My name is Danny Stack. I'm a screenwriter. You might have listened to a couple of my interviews before with Ben Wheatley, director of Kill List, and Jack Thorne, writer of BBC's The Fades. Today I'm very excited because I have a fellow Irishman to interview in the shape of Kevin Lehane. Is that how you like it, Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin Lehane. Fellow Corkman as well.
Okay, fellow Corkman, that's even doubly exciting. But so that's why I didn't want to mess up your surname, Kevin Lehane, because I'm sure you get called Kevin Lehane.
It depends. The Americans and the English say Lehane, and us Irish we say Lehane. So.
Yeah. So you are the writer of the new Irish comedy horror flick Grabbers.
That's right.
So that's fantastic. So thanks for joining me on this little Skype interview.
No problem.
So tell us about Grabbers. It's been an exciting year for you, I know, because it premiered at Sundance earlier in the year, was it?
Yeah, it premiered at Sundance in January, and that was really our world premiere. And then it went to Edinburgh, and it opened the Galway Film Fleadh, and it's just sort of sneaked its way around all the major festivals for the last few months. So it's been cool, and now it's just come out in Ireland. So yeah.
It's just opened in Ireland, and it's about to get its UK premiere at Fright. Oh no, not UK premiere, but it's going to premiere at Fright Fest tomorrow, as we speak.
Yeah, it has its English premiere, I suppose you could call it, at Fright Fest tomorrow. So yeah, it's just that they both tend to just have their own specific way of pitching it. So we had our Irish premiere with Galway Film Fleadh, UK premiere with Edinburgh, and yeah, but Fright Fest is, I suppose, our London English premiere. But yeah, I think Fright Fest will be the biggest screen that we'll have seen on to date, really, because it's at the Empire at Leicester Square, which is 1,400 seats and 13.1 surround sound. So I think it will be pretty spectacular.
Gorgeous, yeah. And do we know when it's going to get nationwide UK release, or even US release, perhaps?
The US release has been handled by IFC, and they're looking at the first quarter of next year, so maybe January, and that's a limited theatrical release and video on demand sort of widespread release, which is sort of the model that they use for a lot of their genre films. Like what films have they released in the past? Super yeah, Super, I suppose, is the one that's just coming into my head. I won't take any guesses at the others because I may get them wrong. And then in the UK, it's being released by Sony Pictures, and that's at Christmas time. And it's another limited release, and the Blu-ray comes not long after that, and the Blu-ray and the DVD, and yeah.
So we have to wait. We have to wait until Christmas to see it.
Unless you're going to Fright Fest tomorrow.
Unless you're going to Fright Fest.
Yeah.
But for people listening, they might have heard just Irish comedy horror flick Grabbers, and that's about it. The thing we know about the project is that everybody goes mad for just the basic pitch of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you pitch it nowadays when somebody says to you, what's it about?
Well, I try to avoid describing it as a horror comedy because I tend to find most horror comedies to be, neither horror or comedy, and just sort of, I don't particularly find that genre to be, the most representative of what Grabbers is.
Yeah.
Grabbers really is a monster movie, and it's like an old school kind of monster movie, like the old Gremlins and Tremors and Critters and films like that. It's got a lot of heart to it. It's got romance. It's more of an adventure story, really, but it's it's got some comedy in it, and it's got some scary moments, but it's not really a horror comedy, I suppose.
Cool.
Yeah.
But in terms of the log line, then, in that kind of Hollywood pitch thing, how do you describe it?
Well, it's about a little island off the coast of Ireland that gets invaded by these creatures called Grabbers that feed off people's blood, and the only way to survive an attack is to make yourself poisonous to eat. And coming to the fact that the characters in it are two police officers who are investigating sort of these disappearances on the island. Come to learn that the only person to survive an attack was drunk at the time. So the best way to keep everybody safe during the storm that's keeping people trapped on the island is to have a lock-in and to get as drunk as possible.
That's classic. That's great. I mean, that's the hook, isn't it? In terms of just that gives you the comedy of it, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the thing that I used to like pitching about Grabbers was just watching people's reaction, because they sort of, anytime you pitch, there's this very focused, sort of intense stare that you get.
Yeah.
And when I would get to the end of it and tell them it's about getting drunk to survive, then you just see this. Their eyes start to light up and the smile start to spread across their faces. You can see that they're picturing the film and picturing what they would imagine would happen in a story like that. And yeah, Grammars was always the easiest project of mine to pitch, because I always knew.
Well, I've even done it as well. I've pitched it. I've gone to some like classes and talks and stuff, and I've pitched Grabbers to people there, and just using exactly what you said in terms of getting to that hook. Everybody just laughs and their faces light up, and they think, that sounds good, I want to see that.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing to have, integral to your premise, I suppose. That kind of appeal.
I think if you want to sort of, for me, the kind of films that I love are, commercial popcorn films, the films that will play at the multiplexes rather than the art house cinemas. And if you want to write those kind of films, then your premise, your log line is probably the most important thing you can have, really. So it's finding that a hook that feels, that it can, that it's worth getting made. I suppose there's so many fantastic stories that just don't have that hook, and for the kind of films that I want to write, I think it's important to just nail down that first, and then get the rest of it sort of working after that.
Exactly, yeah. And this is your debut as a screenwriter, isn't it? In terms of your first film. First
film, yeah. First produced feature script, I suppose.
Exactly. So in terms of the industry, you're a new writer, but I'm guessing you've written a hell of a lot before you wrote Grabbers.
Yeah. I've been writing since 2002, when I did film and TV at a college in Cork called St. John's, and we did short films there and things like that. And I sort of realised that screenwriting was the thing that I was best at, and the thing that I could do without anyone's permission, and could just sort of quite cheaply sort of launch a career in the industry. Realised quite quickly how difficult it is, but I've been writing ever since then. So it Grabbers has been, I think we started filming it 2 years ago, and I think it was 3 years ago that it all started to kick off. But it's been years leading up to that. We're just writing scripts and getting them optioned, and going through development with the Irish Film Board, and being an intern and a production assistant and all the kind of things in the periphery of the industry. But yeah, I suppose Grabbers is it now. It's my first produced credit.
Well, that's all fantastic, isn't it? It's very important just to be involved in the industry in some instance, I suppose, and that's always kind of the rolling stone for anybody breaking in.
Well, I sort of always just track it back to your short film that I did, where you were directing Origin, and I was a production assistant on that, and I can remember you calling me aside in between setups and asking me how, because you passed the script on to a friend of yours at Working Title, and asking me whether I'd heard anything back, and I said I didn't, and you were like, well, I would follow up with him, and because I didn't want to annoy him, I had left it go. But it was, it was through that sort of relationship that we developed that Grabbers really began. So I can sort of track it back to being a production assistant, and being an intern definitely pays dividends as a screenwriter, even though you think it wouldn't. They're completely different jobs, but the industry is so connected that you just need to develop relationships and friendships within the industry so that you can call upon them when you need a favour.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I was going to say, or we said off mic, that you're kind of in a unique position as a Irish UK screenwriter, in that you had a spec script. Not only did you sell it, you actually got it made. Most people either sell it, get it optioned, but then it languishes in development hell.
Yeah.
So yours was a very quick turnaround, and I mean, obviously, you touched on the origins there, of how the process all kick-started about 3 years ago.
Yeah. 2000. I think it was March 2009 when I gave you the script, and you passed it on to Matt Wilkinson, who's now left Working Title, and it went into their little slush pile. And what was funny is that my agent's assistant was a reader at Working Title, and this didn't come out until months and months later, where she was the one that read it for Working Title and recommended it. And then it got into Matt's hands, and he read it and called me in for a meeting and said, who are you? Where have you come from? And told him the backstory about, that I've been being a PA, being an intern, and just sort of writing without having any representation and what have you. And he set me up with some meetings with some agents, and I think about July of that year, 2009, I signed up my agent. He took the script out. Within 3-4 weeks of that, I had optioned it to Forward Films, who ended up producing the film 12 months after that. So it happened incredibly quickly.
In UK terms, that is just so lightning Hollywood fast.
Yeah, and we didn't do any rewrites on the script until it came to pre-production. So I got off so light. I didn't even have to do any development on the project. I remember having those meetings with different producers and different production companies, and getting to hear what their thoughts were on the project and what their pitches to me were for what they wanted to do with it, and feeling just incredibly fortunate that I got into a position where I could choose who I wanted to make the film with.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly having the meeting with John, the director of Grabbers, and Kate and Tracy, the two producers, and them saying, we don't want to pick this up for development, we want to actually produce this. And they just went straight into what their plan for it was going to be, and they just doggedly wanted it, and I just got a really good feeling from sitting in the room with them and going, I trust these guys, and I'd had enough meetings leading up to that where I'd heard some dodgy sort of notes on how you could improve the script by adding characters wearing alcohol-based perfume and what have you, and just thinking that's just nonsense, to going, well, I'm going to take a punt with these guys, and luckily it paid off. And 12 months later we were on set, and we were all just like looking at each other thinking, how quickly did that happen? Like, it was crazy.
What I really like about it is that it shows that the system does work. Much flawed as it is and much maligned as it is, the system really does kind of pick up on projects that it does want to make, and it doesn't care who it's come from or where it's come from. Because I remember, from what memory tells me anyway, you emailed me. I didn't know you at the time. We had never met. But we knew each other online, I think. You had a blog at the time, which I don't think you have anymore.
No, I got rid of that. That was a terrible blog.
But this is the thing. You blogged about your time interning for Richard Donner's company in Hollywood.
I never interned for Richard Donner. I had I got to be interviewed to be an intern at his place.
Oh, right.
And I sat in his office, and he had the verisimilitude Superman sign behind his desk, and I was in LA at the time when I didn't even have a driver's license, and to be in LA, you absolutely need a driver's license. You have to have a car. But I just went out there on a wing and a prayer and just thought, well, the alternative is that I don't get anywhere with my career, and that to me was far more intimidating than going out to LA and just sort of taking a punt on seeing whether it would pan out.
Yeah.
But the big thing that I took away from that was that the industry is just so mundane and so ordinary, and the least intimidating that you could ever expect it to be, and it just sort of made me a little bit more determined, I suppose, to do what I wanted to do with my career, whether it was in LA or whether it was in London or what have you. But just sort of, the sky was the limit, and there was no reason why somebody from Cork couldn't be writing the films that they were writing in the States.
Well, exactly,
Yeah.
And but I think you emailed me, or we knew each other because of our blogs, and being a fellow Irishman and whatnot, we kind of just struck up an email conversation.
That's right, yeah.
And I think you mentioned about trouble getting your scripts read.
I couldn't get read anywhere.
and you sent me through the first 10 pages of Grabbers, and that's all I needed to know in terms of your quality of writing, if you know what I mean. It was only later that I read the full script. But that was enough for me to email Matt Wilkinson at Working Title, who was a mate of mine, and Evan at Industrial Scripts was working at Ealing Studios at the time. And
Yeah, that's right.
those are the two guys I emailed saying, "You look, this guy's worked in Hollywood. He's a fellow Irishman. He's a good guy, and he's got a good script here with a good idea." And I think they both responded very quickly to the idea, wasn't it? It was that Grabbers always stands out as a premise.
Yeah, exactly. I sent through a couple, I think, to you, and that was the one that they wanted to read.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, because the other two were like big, major action adventure stories that would have cost 100 million to produce. So Grabbers was always the more achievable, thought as a film. But and again, sent the scripts in. I didn't hear anything for a couple of months, but once it did get read, it happened very fast after that. It just sort of became like pushing against an open door, where suddenly everybody wanted to read the script that 6 months previous I couldn't get anyone to even take it off me.
But
so it was
and that's fantastic, and that's what I love. It's like nobody really did you any favors as such. It was like the quality of the script did everything for you. So we have working title script reader to thank, really, in terms of it going through the system and coming back with a recommend or a consider on it.
Yeah, my old agent's assistant, funnily enough.
What's his or her name? So we can search it.
God, I cannot remember, which is bad now. But she left my agent's place last year to sort of pursue her own career as a writer director, and God, I'm just drawing a blank right now.
Well, it went from me to Matt at working title, didn't it? And then it went to, you got your agent from that?
Yeah, it went to Ed, my agent, and he read it and said...
You didn't have an agent at the time, we should say.
No, didn't have an agent, didn't have a manager, I've got, I'm well stocked in terms of representation, but then I had nobody. And Ed read it and said, I want to take this out, and I signed with him on my birthday, which I didn't want to mention because it sounded a little too, cliched or but I was celebrating twice that day, and 2 weeks later it was out there, and there was responses were coming back, and people wanted to meet me, and people wanted to option it, and then it just started this sort of bidding war, and as I say, I met with Kate, Tracy, and John, and just thought, that's it. I'm happy with these guys. Let's do it. And I wasn't particularly the biggest fan of John's first film, Tormented, but
that's right. He was a fairly new director, wasn't he? He'd done Beyond the Rave for Hammer, the online thing.
Yeah, but I don't. That was just him writing, an online, I suppose, anthology thing. I've not really seen it, so I don't know. But from what John has told me, and then just liked what John had to say, and sort of John had the exact same feelings about what the film should be as I did. And for me, it's always just been, going through the experience of being an intern, seeing the industry, going through development in Ireland on a much smaller scale, but just realising that it doesn't matter how good the script is, it just comes down to how good your collaborators are, and you have to really carefully choose who you want to work with. And if they have, the best credits in the world, but they are somebody that your gut tells you are not your friend, then you have no business working with them, because it's hard enough to sort of make things happen when you respect the person and you trust them. But if you have any sort of doubts about somebody and they're giving you notes that you don't agree with, then the project just ends up just collapsing. And so I just had good feelings from John that he was the right director for me, and just it's been a fantastic collaboration really with him.
Well, that's an interesting area, actually, that we could probably talk about in terms of, the dream becoming a reality now. You've got a script that's getting fast-tracked from development into production. The differences between looking at the industry and saying, I could do that, and I could be on a film from start to finish and not get fired, and do all the rewrites and do all the notes.
Yeah.
And the reality of all that pressure and expectation, and, as you say, the people that you work with. Mm-hmm. How did you find it, or did you feel that pressure, or did you just go with the flow?
As I say, John was incredibly patient with me. So for me, one of the great things that John told me was never stress the bad notes. You're going to get them, but if you make a point to argue that why the notes are wrong, or why that's a destructive note that's going to just destroy the project, then you risk making it a much bigger issue for the person that's giving you the note, and then it becomes something that they just feel that they need to win that argument, I suppose. So just do the good notes and just ignore the bad notes, and it just became about, I didn't want anybody else to sort of take charge of doing any changes to the script or anything like that. I always wanted to be the person that could do it, and I knew that I could do it better than anyone else. So once I had that trust in John and in the producers, then it was just fun, really, to just brainstorm and just do the job, I suppose. I had to do rewrites on set, and we had to rewrite the ending during production, and I earned my stripes on the project, but it never felt like it was too much of an ordeal to do it, because I loved the idea of making a film and just doing something that I'd spent my entire life wanting to do, which is to be a filmmaker. So it was exciting more than it was ever too stressful, I suppose.
And were those production rewrites, issues to do with production, or were they kind of audience feedbacks of any test audience things, or what kind of stuff?
No, Grabbers was an incredibly tight schedule, and we didn't have as much money as we would have, hoped to have had for a film like Grabbers, which is a visual effects film. It's a monster movie. So all the notes that I had to do, they were never really to do with story, never really to do with character. It was always to do with bringing the budget down and just making it affordable and achievable. And that's sort of where it began, really, was in pre-production. And then, during production was actually during filming that we had to do rewrites, because we filmed over Christmas 2010 going into 2011. So we finished in February 2011. And we were filming in Northern Ireland, in Belfast and in Donegal, and we got absolutely blasted by the blizzards that hit that year. So Grabbers, a lot of Grabbers is filmed outside, and it's filmed in the wild with the beaches of Donegal, and it's meant to be a little island, and a lot of it was night shoots, and it was just punishing, and we just lost days and days and days to bad weather where we were just buried under snow for 2 foot and couldn't do anything about it. So we had to shut down production, and you have to be able to sort of rewrite yourself out of those holes where suddenly you've had to cut 10 pages out of the script, which up until 6 weeks beforehand had been locked, and it was not going to change. And that's where you sort of realise your back is up against it, and I'm having to rewrite a scene that in 20 minutes that they're going to have to shoot, and it's in the finished film, and it's there because we needed to plug a hole. And it was, I suppose, as I say, earned my stripes on it, but that's filmmaking. That's just sort of the way it is, and as long as you've got a good team and everybody is there to do the best version of the film possible, then it's not as difficult as it would seem, I suppose.
Well, did you find that kind of rewrites liberating, exciting, or annoying, or all of the above?
Always annoying. Rewrites are always annoying. But the one thing you sort of realise as a writer, and I was given, I was never considered to be the newbie, even though I was. I was just treated as an equal by the producers and by John, and it really felt like a very even foursome. But when you have practical problems, like you can't open that window, then it goes back to script. It becomes a script problem. And every problem that you hit in production becomes a script problem. It goes right back to the script. You have to change the script in order to make it achievable, because the crew and the cast have to work off of something that's on the page. So it would just be tedious little things, like you can't open that window, so no longer can O'Shea climb out of it and fulfill that sort of beat that was in the script. He now has to do something else. You've got to rewrite the geography of the scene differently so that something else can happen, and you don't have any time. You've got to do it right now because you've got so many setups that you need to get through, and everybody is just there right now to do it, and you can't sort of stop and say, let me go away and think about this and come back the next day. You have to do it right now. And I suppose when your back is up against it, you just sort of find a way to do it, really.
Well, to fly the flag from, note to finish as a new writer on the scene, that's a big achievement, I think. So kudos to you.
Cheers.
But I mean, how do you look back at it now in terms of, being a new and frustrated writer, trying to get the industry to take notice of you, to all your kind of last couple of years of experience, getting a film made, probably having lots of new meetings now and new opportunities. Does the reality differ to what you had expected previously, or any kind of new or interesting kind of perspectives you have on the industry in terms of what's happening now, or even how it affects your schedule, or how you might approach writing a script?
I suppose not much is different, really. What I expected it to be like is exactly what it is like, really. I think it's far more debilitating to be, a writer that's ready and a writer that can do the job and is just not getting the opportunity to do it, than it is to sort of be in the industry and dealing with, the nonsense that inevitably is a part of any sort of industry that has so many people coming together to do one thing. You know how hard it is to sort of organise even a night out with friends and try and get everybody to agree to where you're going to go and do whatever you're going to do. And that's pretty much what it's like making a film. It's just, times 1,000. But I suppose words of wisdom that I'm trying to think of.
Anything that comes to mind, really. Or even, for new writers trying to break in, because I presume there'll be a lot of listening to this. Just in terms of anything they can do to just either get involved, get ahead, or break in some way.
You just need to be hopeful, and you just need to create opportunities that give you hope. So making short films, applying to competitions, sending your scripts out there. I suppose one thing I can say, which is not to get disappointed about getting rejected, because one of the more ironic rejections that I got was from the Irish production company Samson Films, who are the co-producers on Grabbers. And I sent them the script before you had read it and before you'd sent it out there, and they rejected it. And they were one of the few Irish production companies that had an open door policy, and I'd sort of hit everybody that had an open door policy with not just Grabbers but many other scripts. And then the script came back to them through Forward Films, and they read it and said, "Yeah, we love this. We want to get involved. We want to produce this." And I sat down with David Collins, who's the executive producer, and said, that you guys rejected it 2 years ago, and now you're co-producing it. And he was mortified. But the reason I tell that story is because, there could be 100 other reasons that they said no to the script at that time, but their opinions are completely changed 2 years later when it came to them via Forward Films. So you can't really trust rejections on face value. It could be that the person is in a bad mood, or they'd never got to actually finish the whole script, or they had something else that was quite similar to it, or they just, it was just a bad day, I suppose. So but you just got to be able to take rejection. You've just got to be bulletproof, because you're going to hear no 99.999% of the time, even after you've made a film, even after you have success. And you will always get notes. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm sure Aaron Sorkin's getting notes from the network for Newsroom that he's working on. It's just part of the job. So you have to be open-minded and collaborative, and you got to write what you love, but just not be in love with what you've written.
Right, that's good. And I presume now the industry obviously is greeting you with open arms, or at least much more open than before.
The industry is still the industry. You still got to hustle. You still got to prove yourself. And for me, it's a case of just proving that I'm not just a guy that writes monster movies.
Yeah.
So I've never written once. I never had written one before Grabbers, and I've never written one since. But I still get called up for all those sort of pitches, and it doesn't interest me. So I tend to just turn them all down. But
wow.
that's just the nature of the business, I suppose. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, can you talk about anything you're working at the moment, or any opportunities that have come up? Or...
Yeah, well, I'm writing my own things as much as developing things with other people, but they're all quite different to Grabbers, and I've always been somebody that writes the films that I want to see on a Friday night, and I tend to just like the real big popcorn films, the stuff that Hollywood makes, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So has Hollywood come knocking? Because in the UK, there's not much opportunity to write those big films, is there?
Unless you do them yourself. I mean, the Grabbers, I think, is as Hollywood as you can get. It just happens to be set in Ireland. It's just a big visual effects monster movie that in terms of Irish cinema, has just not been made before. So I don't think that geography should hold you back, really.
No.
But I mean, I've got my agents in the States now. I'm with CAA there, and my manager's in Circle of Confusion. So I'm well represented there, I suppose. And it just comes down to that next script that I will give them, which I'm actively writing at the moment, or was until I did this interview.
You haven't gone to Hollywood then and done the pitch meeting circuit thing, or does that even exist in terms of just being courted for meet and greets and anything you'd like to pitch or anything you'd like to work on?
I've done the whole general meeting thing. I did that after Sundance, but yeah, I mean, I've the way that it gets phrased to me is that I'm known out there, and the next thing I write, people will read. But I don't have any track record there, so I've not actually done a project in the Hollywood development system, I suppose. So Hollywood is as much a cottage industry in a much bigger scale as the UK, in so much as that everybody knows each other, and it's really insular. And yeah, I suppose once you get on that ladder and you start making something in LA with a production company, then everybody gets a sense of what you're like. Whereas in the UK, because of Grabbers now, people know that I can see my way through on a project and not need to be rewritten, or not need to be replaced in order to bring somebody else in to do on set rewrites or anything like that. And even doing ADR, I was with Grabbers all the way through, and I wrote Twist as well on a very short deadline and things like that. So I'm sort of much more of a newbie in the States rather than I am in the UK, I suppose.
What was that one you mentioned, Twist?
Twist, yeah. Twist is a project that Red Bull Media are producing, and it's a parkour 3D heist action thriller teenage movie.
As you do.
As you do, based on Oliver Twist.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, but that was just a project that I wanted to just jump on and just prove to people that I could write different voices and write something as a gun for hire and not be known as just the Grabbers guy.
Yeah.
So I did that really just for that reason, I suppose, and the fact that I could just have a laugh with it, and it was not a project that was taking itself too seriously, and that tends to be the things I like to work on more than anything. So yeah.
Cool. Well, we should probably start wrapping things up, so I'll just leave you go with a couple of easy questions.
Go for it.
Any screenwriting heroes, UK or otherwise, past and present or whatever?
Screenwriting heroes. Preston Sturgis, William Goldman, the Coen brothers, Quentin Tarantino, Joss Whedon. Yeah, those guys, I think. Dale Launer. I love the scripts that Dale Launer was doing.
What's Spottis?
Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Oh, yeah.
Ruthless People. Yeah. Oh, God, he's done a few real laugh out loud, comedies. My Cousin Vinny, I love this stuff.
Fantastic. And as a final kind of question, which you've kind of covered a little bit already, but kind of what's next for you? How do you see the rest of the year or even next year panning out?
I don't know. I don't tend to try to second guess the way things are going to go for me. I just tend to write what I want to see and just hope that it's something that people want to make. I'd like to get back to the States. I'd like to sort of work more out there and sort of get on the ground level with people. As I say, now that I've got my agents, I'd like to sort of exploit that and hopefully just make more films, really. I had such a blast making grabbers that the longer that it takes me to get something going, the more feverish I'll be, I suppose, when I actually am back on set doing something. Because it is the most exciting thing that you can think of as a screenwriter. It's just actually making something like a film. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, here's to a lot more Irish and UK films just getting out there and getting made and doing well, because by all things, the buzz on Grabbers has been great so far. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed for more and more success for that. Well done. It's been a fantastic journey from 2009 to now.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us today.
Cheers, Danny.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So there you have it. A nice interview there with Irish screenwriter Kevin Lehane. Thanks for downloading this Industrial Scripts Insiders Interviews. Easy for me to say. You try saying that. And we'll see you again next time. Cheers. Bye.